Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of content area reading. I want to quickly remind you that we are going to use Canvas as our source of communication and text structure for our coursework. And I also wanted to mention before we dive into week 2 that I have thoroughly enjoyed reading your discussion board assignments and watching your videos on Flipgrid. I'll get those graded and to you as soon as I can, but I did want to mention that because this was the first week of school, I did go in and change the assignment due date to August 16th, just to give folks a little bit more time to go back and respond to folks who may have added the class after this week's assignment. So we do have a drop add period, and I wanted to be mindful of that. And I also wanted to give you just a little bit more time to get those two areas of assignments in. I don't typically do that, but at the beginning of the course, I felt like it was important to open that up for you. So those due dates have changed from this past Sunday. I'm giving you another week to go back in and look at that. But that means that if you haven't gotten that done, then you now have a third assignment that is due, because this week's assignment will not change. It is due this week on Sunday night by midnight. So let's talk about what that looks like. All right, remember we're going through Canvas modules to access each week's work, and there's the week 2 recording, and then of course there's the overview. So it's the same structure as last week, so I'll click on the overview, and there's numbers that guide you through the work of this week. And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about them because it might be confusing to some of you. And that's why I do these videos. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Sometimes I can write things out and it sounds clear to me, and then maybe it can be confusing to someone else. So I do want to reiterate that that this is content area reading, and this week we're actually digging into that understanding a little bit more than last week. And so each week we'll take a little bit of our prior knowledge and we'll move forward and deepen your understanding. So this week we actually are going to tie some things together in terms of adding that literacy link to your content area of instruction. And if your focus is already in an area of literacy, then it might be that you find that some of this is already in your schema. However, some of you may be very unfamiliar with adding literacy to your content area, such as science, such as physical education, art, music. There's a multitude of content areas that we have standards for that are written by our State Department. But what I want you to do today is to really analyze those standards and think about opportunities to help students become literate in that content by reading, writing, and thinking. And so the first thing I'll ask that you do is review the NCDPI standards for instruction for your related content area. So if you're a music ed major, then I want you to go into your music curriculum standards, and I want you to think about choosing a standard from that curriculum for the assignment for this week. If you are in a different content area of study, maybe you are a physical education major and you would definitely not be in the music curriculum. You would be going into your area of study. And so I'm going to ask that you choose a standard from your area of study, and then you are going to really look at those verbs that are in that standard. Okay, so there may be one, there may be multiple verbs, but I want you to analyze those verbs by highlighting them. And then I want you to refer to Bloom's taxonomy, and that link is also in this module's resources, and really think about what level, what depth of thinking a student would have to do in order to meet that standard. And then you're going to think about an activity that might bring about some type of learning evidence that would show a teacher that that child has thought to that depth. on Bloom's and that they have worked to meet that standard for that curriculum. So we're linking all of these pieces together through what we have students make, do, say, or write in the classroom. And what they produce or do allows for a teacher to be able to analyze their level of learning. And I refer to this as evidence of learning. And that evidence of learning, or those evidences of learning that students create, help a teacher to see if the level of thinking that was required to meet that standard was actually used by that student. So you'll go through that process of highlighting those verbs, thinking about some areas of activities that students can do in the setting of that particular content area class. And then you're going to think about that as it relates to links to literacy. What can we use? What can we have them read? What can we have them write? What can we have them think through to help guide their understanding of that standard? And that's the content area reading piece. So we're going to hold on to that standard and those highlighted verbs, and then you're going to use some other resources that are available in this week's module to be able to get through and have enough of what you need for the assignment for this week, which is called a lesson sketch assignment. So it's not a full-blown lesson plan, but it's just kind of a sketch of ideas for linking standards of content area to literacy to quality instruction. Okay, so you'll hold on to that standards analysis that you did, and then you'll use the resource that is called Beginner's Guide to Text Complexity. And you'll read through that, and then thinking about your particular grade level or content area, I want you to choose a text. Now, this text can be printed in such a way that you have already got access to it. It's a book, it's a magazine article, something that you know will help link and it's related to the standard that you have selected. Or it can be an online resource. It can be something that you have access to through the computer. And so you can choose either print or online, but it has to support the content area and standard that you selected in those above activities. And then you'll use what is embedded in that guide called the text complexity rubric. So it's in that guide. And what that text complexity rubric will do, it will help you to see that even though we may select something for our students to read that correlates with the content that we're teaching, there are levels of complexity that may cause difficulty or lack thereof for our students as they are making their own connections. And there are a couple of other pieces that I have added in this week's resources that might help you understand from a student's perspective how they would interact with new content or familiar content or a different type of reading of that content. And so there are several resources that if you do not work through those and read through those, your lesson sketch might not be of the quality that it needs to be when you really think about linking all those pieces together. Standards for instruction, level of thinking, a type of text that is the just right complexity for meeting that particular standard. And then you're going to use all of those pieces together and you're going to come up with a lesson sketch assignment. So there's an article on schema and understanding how children use what they already know when they're reading something new or engaging in activities with new content. And there is an article by ASCD on content area reading that specifies particular content areas of study and gives you some strategies that can help build upon those depths of thinking skills that children are supposed to have, which there also is that link to the standard and those verbs that are in that standard. And so you'll use a lesson sketch template, and that is also attached in this module. And along with that lesson template, and it's just a sketch. Remember, I use that word strongly. You're going to use that standard that you chose. You're going to use the text that you chose, and then you're going to think through based on the resources that are provided for you in addition to those two areas. You're going to think of a reading strategy, and you're going to complete an assignment as though you're sketching out, you're kind of building a blueprint for a lesson design. And the template is there for you. I encourage you not to actually use the one that is provided, but use it as a guide. And I'd like for you to create your own template in a Word document or a Google Doc and add your information for your lesson sketch into the one that you created. And I just want to reiterate that if you are using a Word doc, then you would obviously save it to your computer and put it in to the assignment Dropbox as an attachment. But if you use Google Docs and you do not download it into a Word doc to attach, and you want to send me the link in the assignment Dropbox, please make sure you open it for sharing. Because if I cannot open it for editing purposes, I can't grade it because I can't see it. So just make sure that I don't want you to work so hard on getting that sketch done and then I don't have access to it. You can use my Gmail address if that's helpful, but however it works best for you, I have opened it up for links for assignments, and I've also opened it up for attachments. So that's sort of where we are for this week, and I just want you to be very thoughtful in the development, and I want you to think about ways that this could build literate students, not only in understanding the content that you're trying to teach, but in general, we're building their thinking skills so that they are problem solvers and thinkers while they're reading and writing and engaging in their own learning and producing that evidence of learning so that they can become better equipped to process text. So when you complete that assignment, you should have a content area lesson sketch with a literacy component to support learning for the particular content area of choice. And the goal is that your lesson sketch shows that there will be, with thoughtful and mindful planning on the teacher's part, links to literacy skills that will help develop that evidence of learning by showing what a student is thinking through what they make, do, say, or write. Now, I hope I've clarified that, but I encourage you, if it sounds a little bit confusing, to just go step by step and then use the resources in the module that are identified in these steps to get you through this particular assignment this week. All right, so we'll go back to modules and let you just kind of see there are the standards. So you just click on that and you have access to all curriculum areas. So you can choose a grade level and a standard that is of interest to you. And that's what you're going to build out from for your lesson sketch. All right, and then you have a video that explains Bloom's taxonomy and those critical thinking skills and those levels of thinking. And then this is the support for the text complexity and the different types of text that we have to be mindful of in putting out there in front of our students, really analyzing what level of complexity, because we might want to consider as the teacher of that content what misconceptions they may have, what difficulty they may have, and what areas we need to front load and support them with before we release them to read it. So this particular beginner's guide is very helpful in that text selection and in that understanding of how complex or lack thereof a student may have to have some scaffolding. Some may be fine, and that brings up the whole point of the differentiated piece. So just really take a deep dive into this text complexity piece so that you understand when you're looking at a piece of text or a resource that you'd like to use while you're teaching a particular content area, particular subject area, particular standard within any of that. What do we have to do as teachers to ensure that our kids are going to be successful based on the complexity of what they're reading? Then an article about schema, and schema is something that is you're going to find that if it's not a familiar term to you, that it's a familiar process. And so this particular article will help you to be able to support that lesson sketch in a way that you're thinking about it through the planning perspective of your students, not what is the teacher going to do to relay this information, but who are my students and what may they bring to the learning experience that supports their understanding, and then what will I need to do, or what strategy might I need to use to be able to help them deepen that knowledge base. This is a great article. All right, then here's another one that helps support a little bit of your understanding or possible misunderstandings about the kind of text that we provide students and what makes reading easier for them. And I'll give you an example. Like one of the items on here is that the text is shorter rather than longer. Well, that doesn't mean we select a small amount of reading for them every time, but maybe as we're planning a lesson or we're sketching out a lesson design, if we know the text is going to be very complex, then we want to be mindful that we might want to give them short excerpts from that text and structure our lesson in a way that we are chunking it to where they're reading a little bit and then they're doing something for a little while, and then they're reading a little bit more, and then they're doing something with what they've learned, what they've read. So that's just an example of what makes that reading process easier, is giving maybe with a big piece of complex level text, we may want to give them shorter pieces of that text to be able to process through over an extended period of time. Okay, so there's just some examples there of what makes it easier. And then, of course, this is the article from ASCD, which has those reading strategies in it. What you can do here is you can kind of read the overview, but then you want to be able to think about what that looks like for particular content areas. Right? So you just kind of scroll down and see. But I really want you to think about that as it relates to vocabulary understanding, and then, of course, strategies to help students produce something, to help students make, do, say, or write something that is evidence of learning. And you're going to be saying evidence of learning a lot by the end of this course. Okay, so then by the completion of all that, then you will create your own lesson sketch design using the same format, but just in your own document. And then you submit it for grading. And it's worth 50 points this week. So lots of thinking and planning and cross-referencing this week. So I encourage you to be mindful and not try to rush through this, but really be thoughtful in how all of these resources are connected together for the betterment of the student's ability to read and understand content. Okay, they're reading to understand content. So what can we do to scaffold that? What can we do to differentiate from one student to another who may be at different and varying levels of readability? And then what can we do with the kind of text that we have if, in fact, it's an easy read then we might not need to be as supportive, and we might not need to scaffold as much, and we might not need to do a lot of front loading. But if it's a more complex text, then what should the teacher do before releasing those students to that kind of learning environment to ensure that they understand and can not only capture the essence of the content, but also understand that they are building their literacy skills and their thinking skills. So I'm excited about being able to look at what you come up with. Take your time. Please be mindful that this is due by midnight on Sunday night. And if you need anything or have any additional questions or concerns, I will have open office hours this week, and you can find those days and times in the syllabus. And just, you would just hop on to my personal meeting room link that's provided for you in the syllabus, and you can just walk me through or ask some questions, but don't come unprepared. Really know what you want help in, and let's use our time wisely. Okay, so I look forward to seeing your work this week. I apologize for this video being a little bit lengthy, but I just want to make sure you really understood the assignment. Have a great week, folks, and I look forward to working with you. Take care.